It's the penultimate round of the 2020 Intelligent Money British GT Championship from the Snetterton circuit near Norwich. And already we have enjoyed one fantastic 60-minute race earlier on this morning that saw another new winner in the GT3 ranks, and the championship battle become tighter than ever before. And now we rinse and repeat. We have another 60-minute race coming your way here this afternoon from a damp Snetterton, but certainly I wouldn't call this a wet Snetterton anymore. It's still not the warmest of days, it's still not the most pleasant looking of days, but the track is slowly drying, and to that cause we have sent David Addison, my co-commentator, out onto the grid to gather some information about starting tyres for the teams, which will be released out on pit lane and onto the grid ahead of this penultimate round of the championship in just a few minutes' time. Andy McEwen then up here solo for the time being in the commentary box. David will join me once the race gets underway, and this is an intriguing situation that we have in the championship. If you weren't with us earlier on today, well, where were you? Because you missed a fantastic 7th round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship that was won by 2C's Motorsport. They finally got their first ever victory in the championship. Jordan Witt and Jack Mitchell at the wheel of the number 10 McLaren 720S GT3 took the victory from third on the grid, and they fought their way through ahead of the Ram Racing Mercedes and Marwell Motorsports 78 Lamborghini to lead the way and held on to the flag. Second place was the number 78 car of Sandy Mitchell and Rob Collard. It snatched that second position on the line away from Optimum Motorsports McLaren by just 81 thousandths of a second, and with Ram Racing finishing further down the order, the championship gap has narrowed. In GT4, the championship situation has shifted slightly since this morning, although it is still very, very tight indeed. We are looking set for a fascinating conclusion to the GT4 championship. Well, TF Sport have been at the front of the GT4 Championship throughout the season, and they still lead the way after the first race earlier on today, which saw Jamie Caroline and Dan Vaughan in the number 97 car take their first victory of the year. They now have sole ownership of the championship lead that they previously had shared with their teammates in the number 95 car, Jordan Collard and Patrick Mathiasen. They were on the podium in race 1, but they have now slipped down to second place in the championship. Both of the TF cars, though, very much still in the fight. So too are Academy Motorsport, although they endured their second worst race of the year earlier on this morning. Just 6 points scored for the Matt Cowley driven car. He usually shares with Jordan Albert, but new co-driver this weekend in the shape of Will Moore. They'll be looking to get back to the podium again in this one. HHC Motorsports second in the championship now for Jordan Collard and Patrick Mathiasen, and the McLaren 570S GT4 is looking to try and close the gap on TF Sport, whilst their sister car, the 57, slipped back a bit further after race 1, but still mathematically are in contention for the title. So realistically, 5 cars then still in it for the GT4 Championship, with now 2 races to go. This is how the points look: 125 points for Daniel Vaughan and Jamie Caroline for TF Sport. They are therefore 9.5 points clear of Jordan Collard and Patrick Mathiasen, with the second TF car of O'Brien and Kibble third, only half a point further back. Then comes Matt Cowley, singular, because he's now competing this weekend without his regular co-driver. As I said, he is fourth in the points on 104.5 for Academy, and then the 2 HHC cars, Chris Westmail and Gus Bowers, are next, ahead of Jordan Albert, who of course is losing points by virtue of being absent from Snetterton. So it's all incredibly tight. It is tight enough as well that the championship cannot mathematically be wrapped up today, because the championship decider at Silverstone in November is a 3-hour race. It is therefore worth 37.5 points. It is not possible for anyone in either GT3 or GT4 now to get more than 37.5 points clear of their opposition. So the championship will go down to the Silverstone showdown in about a month's time, but this race is still of huge importance because it will set the scene for that final race. Wet tyres going on to the number 69 Ram Racing Mercedes then, the car that still leads the GT3 Championship, but having arrived here 9.5 points clear at the top of the table, they are now just 1 point clear of Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell. And Ram Racing in the first race of the day lost quite a few championship points. However, they are still very much in the battle for the championship. Ram Racing then arriving here as the championship leaders after their first victory at Donington Park last time out. Sam Tahan and Patrick Kujala, they may have seen that lead shrink after the first race of the day, but they still hold the points advantage, a very narrow one at that, coming into this penultimate round of the season. The car they have that 1 point advantage over are Brands Hatch winners Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell at the wheel of the number 78 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. 1 win, 3 podiums to their credit this year, and they outraced Ram Racing in the earlier race today. The 72 car won both the Snetterton races last year. Adam Ballon, though, had a spin in his first stint in race 1 today. Therefore, he and Phil Keane have lost ground. Still third in the championship, but 21.5 points back, with only 37.5 points available after this race. They've got work to do. So too, James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien in the Jensen Team Rocket RJM McLaren, who had a really tricky first race. They've been struggling for confidence and traction in the wet conditions all year long. When it's dry, they're one of the fastest cars on track. They'll be very happy, therefore, that the rain, for the time being, appears to be staying away here at Snetterton. So they are your movers and shakers in the points, at the front of the points in GT3, and this is how it all stands after race 1. Look at that, 1 point in it after 7 races. That is remarkable. Patrick Kujala and Sam Tahan for Ram Racing have the most slender of advantages over Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell. Then it's Adam Ballon and Phil Keane third. As I said, they need to try and stay within that 37.5 point window to keep in contention, whilst James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien for RJN and Jack Mitchell and Jordan Witt need to try and get within that 37.5 point buffer to still be in contention going to the decider. So the championship extremely finely poised in both GT3 and GT4. David Addison is shaking next to me because I'm guessing, David, whilst the rain seems to be staying away, the temperature isn't exactly climbing.
I'd love to tell you I'm shaking with excitement, which is only true up to a point, Andy, because it is Arctic out there and the rain is falling again, in fact. Now, the plan was that I go up and down the grid and have a look at tyres. There's little point because most of the teams are saying it is still too wet. The standing water, the pace of the cars in the previous race was so far away from a dry time. There's no wind, even though it's very cold, there is no wind to dry the track. And even going out of the pit lane, there's been spray, you can still see puddles. There is rain starting to fall again, and the radar is saying there's more on the way. And I got cold, so I came back indoors. So all the evidence is that they're all going to start on wet. One team did say, you know, you might roll the dice and put slicks on for the second stint. And I said, what, even for the AMs? And they said, well, you know, might be. But I think certainly the smart money for stint 1 is you've got to go wet. And I'd be really surprised if it gets wetter during the first stint that you would consider it for the second stint, because I just can't see the road getting to a point where slicks are going to work. It's so cold out there, they're never going to get the temperature, even if it stops raining.
Is it cold today, David?
I mentioned that. And you know it's cold if northern people are moaning about the cold, because normally we'll be in our shorts in this temperature. It is proper Arctic out there, yes. However, that car, just to finish another story, I just spoke to Bas Linders, you see him in the grey jacket there, who's the team manager for Optimum. I said, where did all the time go at the end of race 1 against the Lamborghini? A lot of it was down to traffic. They lost quite a lot, 4 or 5 seconds over more than one lap in and amongst the GT4 cars. So the blame has been laid at the door of the traffic rather than the outright pace of the Lamborghini.
Understood. Okay. The point David was making there about AM drivers, this is of course the second race of the day. This is the race that the pro drivers, or the quicker silver drivers in the Silver Cup case, start the race, and the AMs jump in later on. So yeah, the conditions may well have changed by the time we get to that second stint. Wet tyres we can confirm there on the 78 Barwell Lamborghini. The 72 car, the sister car, you would imagine is going for a similar sort of strategy. And Barwell, championship-wise, definitely the winners, at least on the 78 side of the camp in the first race of the weekend. They have closed now to, as I said, just 1 point off the championship lead. The 72 car, though, has a little bit of work to do to get back from third place. Well, we've talked a lot this weekend and indeed this season about the 69 Ram Racing Mercedes, but the number 6 car is still looking for its first victory of the year, and Ian Loggy and Jelmer Berman could well have a shot in this second race of the day. Kelvin, I believe, is down on the grid, and he's got Ian Loggy with him.
I'm here with Ian Loggy. I've got to say, Ian, I think, is one of the quickest and bronze drivers in the championship, so I think there's no better person to speak to. These sort of conditions, Ian, are you pretty tetchy, or are you in your comfort zone with these conditions?
This morning in the warm-up was really wet, so there was a lot of standing water, and when there's standing water I think everyone's tetchy, but the reality is, right now the rain's stopped. It might come back on, but right now I think the conditions are okay, and I think it will suit the number 6 car.
And I guess me being a northerner, yourself a Scotsman, we're used to this weather. So for us, this is shorts and t-shirt weather, maybe.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Have a good race,
every
mate.
time I come to Snetterton, it's the same.
Back to you guys.
Thanks, Kelvin. Ian Loggy then will be looking forward to this one, you would imagine, and desperately trying to get that first race win of 2020. The number 6 car starts third on the grid behind the 2 Barwell cars, and therefore is perhaps perfectly poised to do so, because both of those cars in front we know may struggle a little bit more in the wet compared to the front engine Mercedes, and certainly for the 78 car they have a pit stop success penalty to serve as well. So it could be that number 6 car, which is started by Jelmer Berman, he will be the highest placed pro on the grid at the start of this race, and alongside him the second highest placed pro driver will be Andrea Caldarelli, third highest placed of course, because Phil Keen will start the 72 Lamborghini from the front row. And there it is, a very busy but socially distanced grid here at Snetterton, as the anticipation and I reckon nerves maybe start to grow out there now. We are getting down to the business end of the championship, and whilst the title cannot be won today, it is still a really vital race. And when we get to Silverstone in a month's time, David, we will no doubt look back at this weekend as the weekend that really won somebody a championship or lost them a championship. I was thinking in the break between races, this car, the 78 Barwell Lamborghini, that snatched second place by 8/100ths of a second at the end of race 1. Well, those extra handful of points they earned by snatching that second place could win them a title at Silverstone.
Absolutely right. Everything is vital, isn't it? And that's part of that keeping out of trouble element as well, because any point is absolutely essential. Now, GT4 gave us a great first race. More of the same to come, and Kelvin has found himself down in Aston Martin land.
Well, this is the car that I drove last year. Not this particular one, but the Aston Martin GT4 is a great car, and it's notorious it looks after its tyres. Now, I was speaking to one of the drivers, I won't name who, from the McLaren team, and they were saying they really struggle to compete with the Aston in the wet, because the Aston has such ability to drive out the corners and get good traction going out. The McLaren seem to be struggling there, but there's a McLaren just ahead of this particular Aston. So we'll see if that McLaren can keep this Aston at bay. In the meantime, we've also got the Mustang, which is looking good there, the pole position. I think it's set to be a great GT4 race here.
Well, we had a great GT4 race earlier on, and what's really encouraging about that, partly we said it in the first race, Andy, it's the variety of the cars on the grid, but also these are turnkey races. So after many, many years of about to happen, GT4 has happened properly. The manufacturers have got involved. Grids globally are good, you know, whether it's a subordinate class like this or whether it's a standalone championship, and there's so much choice, and because the cars are quite close to road-going counterparts, you can see them move around, and it's a great training area for GT people.
Exactly, and for the fans as well, you know, they are very recognisable cars, but and the same is true of the GT3 examples, but particularly, as you say, those GT4 cars that have a lot more in common with their road-going versions. And you know, you look at any of these cars and you know instantly it's a McLaren, it's an Aston Martin, it's a BMW. And what I love about GT racing, and always have done, David, is that these are the cars that if I was a kid now, I would have posted across my bedroom wall. You know, these are absolutely stunning cars. They look great, they sound great, and yeah, those GT4 cars this year in particular have been so evenly matched. I mean, we're used to these championships going down to the wire. It's almost a given now at the start of every season it will end up with a last race decider in GT3 and GT4. But what's really impressed me this year across both classes is that it's not just 2 or 3 teams that are still very close in points, it's maybe 5 or 6 or 7. So it is you know, it is wide open. It's very close, but it's wide open across more teams and more cars perhaps than usual.
If you see in the second stint particularly any yellow wall tyres, you'll know they've gone on to slicks, but we'd be very surprised were that to happen. It is going to be a proper rolling start, we are told. So the first wetter race did begin behind the safety car, but then we didn't have, thankfully, a safety car interruption during the actual race itself. We got through then to the very end, all good. The pit stop window, of course, is staggered again for the GT3 and the GT4 cars, so you don't get that overly crowded pit lane. Snetterton's pit lane is not the biggest, and as now the green flag is shown, the race director, Peter Daly, lets the cars set off for this all-important lap to get a little bit of warmth into the Pirelli wets. And are we going to have a double from McLaren? We're still looking for a first double winner of anybody out of GT3, and there's part of me that would quite like us not to have a double to keep this going for the last round of the championship. But this, Andy, is the grid.
Yes, an all Barwell Motorsport front row at a circuit at which that team always excels. It's Sandy Mitchell, second place in the championship, who has the pole position, third in the championship for the 72 car, and they are alongside. Jelmer Berman, third on the grid, yet to win this year, has Andrea Caldarelli alongside. Pro drivers, the pair of them, and then on the third row of the grid, Patrick Kuyala, championship leader here in Santahan, with Joe Osborne, who is qualifying well again here this weekend, sixth on the grid for Valve Motorsport in his final appearance, we believe, of the season. Row number 4 sees Matt Griffin in the AF Corsa Ferrari and Ollie Wilkinson's Optimum Motorsport car that ran second in race 1, right up until the final 100 metres of the race. Angus Fender and Jack Mitchell, the two 2Cs Motorsport cars, they locked out the second row on the grid for race 1, the fifth row of the grid for race number 2. The big Bentley of Scott Mulvin for Team Parker Racing lines up on row 6 alongside Michael O'Brien. That is a car we need to watch in the opening stint. They desperately need some points out of this second race to keep their championship hopes alive, but they have been struggling in the wet. Matt Cowley then is on GT4 pole position for Academy Motorsport. Slightly trying time for that team in race 1. They'd like to bounce back with a win in race 2. Patrick Mathiasen alongside for HHC Motorsport in the 58 car. Second row of the GT4 grid sees Patrick Kibble and Chris Westmail. TF Sports Aston Martin ahead of HHC Motorsport McLaren on the second row in GT4. Row number 3 then for Jamie Caroline, the last of the championship contenders. Winner in race 1, but with it all to do in race 2 from 5th. Ben Tuck for Century Motorsport, the 42 car, is alongside. But again, the Century cars haven't looked really all that pacey all weekend. Ewan Hankey should go well in this first stint, the only pro driver amongst a sea of silver-graded drivers at the start in GT4. He's in the Valve Motorsport GT4 McLaren with Adam Hatfield in the second Century BMW lining up alongside him. And then right at the back, not somewhere we're used to seeing this car, to be fair, the Speedworks Motorsport Toyota of Sam Smelt, which has been struggling for traction all weekend long. And it's a shame, because that is a car that we would like to see get its first ever victory in the championship.
Yeah, they've come close, haven't they? They've had podiums this year, and it's good to have another brand on the grid. Toyota has, over the last 12 months, seen the benefit of GT4, got a programme going, lots of development. You've got cars running in the European GT4 series as well as this British assault. So, yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more from the Toyota over the next few seasons. But an all Lamborghini front row, a Mercedes Lamborghini second row, Mercedes and then McLaren on row 3. This is another race that is absolutely wide open. The track is cold, it is greasy rather than wet, I would offer you, but it might get drier. I think the smart money is on it getting wetter before the end of the hour. What are we going to have? Who is going to survive, and which brand is going to come out on top of round 8 of the championship?
The penultimate race of the 2020 Intelligent Money British GT Championship is about to get underway. Barwell Motorsport front row then with Sandy Mitchell and Phil Keane side by side towards the start-finish line. The lights go out, we're away and racing again at Snetterton. Good start made by Mitchell on the inside line. Now, will the two teammates play ball here and try and work together into turn 1? The answer appears to be no. Phil Keane charges round the outside of Mitchell and grabs the advantage. And look at the number 10 car of Jack Mitchell from 10th on the grid is inside the top 5 already.
Really good move that by Phil Keane, because in a sense he was on the more advantageous side of the grid, wasn't he? The outside line where the grip can be found, he used that to his advantage, so he has hit the front. As here you've got Patrick Kuyala trying to gain ground as well. The GT4 cars scrabble out of Wilson hairpin with there. Look, the Aston Martin taking to the dirt. Matt Cowley with his elbows out trying to keep the Mustang ahead as they dive down towards turn 3, but Aston Martin goes through. 97 there. Jamie Caroline leads in GT4. Matt Cowley in the mighty Mustang goes second. It's Patrick Kibble in third place, and at the moment the McLarens are trying to play catch up.
Yeah, Kibble had a good run there out of Palmer's. I think he was attacking Cowley for second place as they drop down into Agostini. We're on board meanwhile with Kuyala, who started in 5th position. I think he's still in 5th. Right behind him, Mitchell and Osborne side by side, and Jack Mitchell will make that move stick, so at least 4 places gained for Jack Mitchell at the start. He found some serious traction and crucially real estate on the outside, and not for the first time today. Angus Fender is on the grass in the number 9 2C's car, and he drops in just ahead of Matt Griffin, who has not had a good start in that Ferrari.
No, he's not. That car does not like cold, greasy conditions. It can't get the benefit of the tyres, and Matt Griffin with a slide there, almost going off the road as well. Angus Fender, we lost count after 3 in the first race of his moments. Well, right now, Phil Keane storming away from Sandy Mitchell in second place. Their third look is Jelmer Berman. Andrea Caldarelli goes 4th. Patrick Kuyala is 5th. 6th is Jack Mitchell as they come now through the S's. Joe Osborne is 7th, and a gap has opened up after them, hasn't it? Before in 8th place there, look, 96 is Ollie Wilkinson. Number 9, Angus Fender, back onto the tarmac. And what's going on in GT4? There was a car off in the background, and it's the Bentley Scott Malvern and 57. Chris Westmail has come to grief now. Did the McLaren hit a spinning Bentley, or did one touch the other to trigger the moment? Either way, that Bentley off the road, on the grass. It's not going to be easy to shift from there. We might yet be looking at an interruption. So let's see, the leaders come by at the end of lap 1, and Phil Keen's advantage after just one lap of the race is already 1.4 seconds. But I'm afraid the Bentley is in strife.
Joe Osborne, though, is on the move, where he wants to be anyway. He looks to the inside of Jack Mitchell to try to reclaim this 6th place. 2 McLarens from different stables here. The 2C's car under assault from the Valve Motorsport car. But the Valve Motorsport car has to stay behind. Osborne on the tight line through Richards just couldn't carry the speed off the corner. And these two are both losing time to the cars in front. Michael O'Brien's had a decent start, hasn't he? 2 places gained for the number 2 car. He's into 9th, stuck behind Ollie Wilkinson's Optimum McLaren at the moment. And that is the car, as we said, that needs some points.
Westmail in the McLaren is into the pit lane. There he is, sorting out the damage, but it's not looking good given the semaphore from the mechanic there saying, cut it, cut it. But Scott Malvern has not completed a lap. Now, whether the car has got going again, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, he has not completed the 3rd sector, so the yellows could still be out in that zone as the race leaders head towards it. So it is Keane from Mitchell, Berman, Caldarelli, Kuyula and Jack Mitchell. That's the order up front. So you've got Sandy Mitchell in the 78 Lamborghini. You've got Jack Mitchell, unrelated, in the number 10 McLaren. And right now, the lead gap is extending as Phil Keane gets away from his teammate.
Yes, but Sandy Mitchell more than holding his own against Yelmer Berman and Andrea Caldarelli. Side by side there as Angus Fender recovers back up the inside of Michael O'Brien. That's 9th place that now belongs appropriately to car number 9.
I know this is a little bit unfair to say, but these are absolutely great conditions for us watching the race because they're neither wet nor dry. You can't quite get the best out of the tyres. It's not totally wet, but it's certainly not dry. And the effort having to be put in by the drivers is absolutely spellbinding, and it's giving us constantly changing fortunes. As you can see it, the car's having to tiptoe out of the corner. Suddenly, drivers accelerate and realise the grip wasn't there and have to go into plan B. This is Patrick Kuyula, so the Finnish driver for Ram Racing, coming into Coram. Again, look, sit on the outside of the road, find the grip if you can, and then drop down to the end of the lap.
Yeah, Caldarelli then starting to fall away from Yelmer Berman and into the clutches of the other Ram Racing car. The championship leading one there is Kuyula in 5th position, who's out of Murray's corner. And lap time wise this time around, I think he will have caught the cars in front. The GT4, by the way, Jamie Caroline has managed to hold on to the race lead, but Matt Cowley kept Patrick Kibble behind him, so it's still Cowley in the Mustang 2nd, Kibble in the 2nd TF Sports Aston Martin in 3rd place. There go the GT3 cars in the background. Look, the first of the GT4s, the 97 car leading the way is Jamie Caroline, and he's getting away now as well. The gap was 7/10 back to Cowley. It's now 2.7 seconds. Cowley in the first race didn't seem to have the ultimate pace. The Academy car gained some time in the pit stops as others served pit stop penalties. My word, that was close to disaster. And it seems in this, in the early stages of this one at least, like the Aston Martins are quicker again.
Absolutely. So the incident between the Bentley and the McLaren we'd seen the aftermath of is being investigated. Jamie Caroline leading, Matt Cowley leading Patrick Kibble 1, 2 and 3 within the GT4 contest right now. And the cars accelerating down towards turn 3 then, with Matt Cowley in the Mustang trying to hang on to position, but of course with 54 minutes to go, it's the second stint that's going to count in a sense, but out wide goes Cowley. Kibble gets up the inside line, so the Aston Martin will go through on the inside there. Yep, job done, coming into Agostini.
Kibble is so good at Palmer's, isn't he? Made some good moves there in race 1, although he's maybe left the door open on the exit of Agostini. No, Cowley can't get the power down. Look at who's catching them as well. That is Ewan Hankey in 4th place in the blue and orange McLaren, another Balf Motorsport run car, the only pro on the track at the moment in GT4. He'll hand over to Mia Fluid at the pit stops. Remember, they won this equivalent race at Alton Park at the start of the year, the second race of the day, and he's having a bit of a nibble here at the sideways Mustang, which wants to try and escape if it can, but the McLaren looks to have better traction at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be long potentially before we see the Balf Motorsport car move ahead. Replay the start, David.
So it's a good getaway by Phil Keane from the outside of the front of the grid, found the grip on the outside at Ritchie's, went through, and of course straight away Yelmer Berman goes into defence mode to try to keep Andrea Caldarelli at bay. Everybody else wriggling their way through Ritchie's. This was how Patrick Kuyula saw the start. That was Caldarelli round the outside, but then he lost another place, look, because that was Jack Mitchell storming past him, and Mitchell straight away almost into the back of Caldarelli, and that down at the S's. The McLaren almost hidden by the Bentley, but they clearly got themselves together and tagged the Bentley into a spin. Scott Malvern did get to the pit lane, but has stayed there, and so too the McLaren. So both of those cars, I fear, with enough damage to be out of the race. Either way, it is a long stop, and you're as good as out.
And Scott Mulvin then officially never completed a lap in this race, and yet he's under investigation for 2 separate incidents. He had that contact with the 57 car, also had contact at some point with Angus Fender. That may be why Angus was on the grass going through Hamilton on the opening lap. So a lively opening lap for the Bentley, and not really in the right way. McLaren battle continues then. Jack Mitchell 6th, Joe Osborne 7th. They're losing time to the cars in front, 3.5 seconds behind Patrick Keeler in 5th position, but Osborne no longer clambering all over the rear of the number 10 car. Takes a tighter line into Agostini, but as we saw in race 1, that isn't really where the grip is in these damp and greasy and slimy and horrible conditions. The drivers hate these conditions, but David, as you said, we enjoy them because we really see the drivers earning their money.
Absolutely. Just imagine what Silverstone's going to be like in November. As I say, you don't need your suntan lotion for that event, I fear. Now, right now, Phil Keane is getting away. He's 4 seconds to the good and does not have any extra time to serve in the pit. So it's very much advantage Barwell at the moment. Barwell's weather forecast, weather radar is saying there is more rain on the way. So build up the lead now for Adam Ballon to preserve in what could be a really treacherous, really testing second stint. Phil Keane, who has come so close to winning this championship for so many seasons we've lost count, he leads the way and has done the absolute fastest speed of anybody thus far within the first sector, doing exactly what he's here to do, which is to go flat out, build up the gap for his co-driver to try to preserve within that second stint. Up towards the timing line then comes Lamborghini number 72. The gap last time was 4 seconds. It's a Barwell 1-2, of course, because Sandy Mitchell is still there in second spot. And Phil Keane breaks the beam now to put 4 laps in the book. Is the margin over 5 seconds yet between the two sister cars? Not quite. 4.8 is the margin, 1-2.
Phil Keane and Adam Ballon's one and only win so far this year came at Alton Park in the second race. They finished 7th in race 1 and won race 2. Well, guess where they finished this morning? 7th, and they are leading at the start of race 2. So they've got this down quite well, haven't they? Get Phil Keane some clean air at the start of race 2, build a gap, and then hope that Adam can defend it in the final 20 minutes or so of the race. Back to GT4 meanwhile, and the 58 car is starting to make its presence felt, isn't it? That's Patrick Mathiasen, 5th position at the moment, 2nd in the championship, and 2 or 3 places here potentially up for grabs before the end of the stint. He's closed in on these two as they're dicing away, and Hankey hasn't yet been able to do anything about Matt Cowley, so it's all kind of bunching together.
That's right. Now, the 58 McLaren was 2nd earlier on in the day, so having served 10 seconds in race 1, which was partly why it lost the possible win, it's still got to serve 7 in this race. So once more, Jordan Collard in the second stint is going to have to really work hard to make sure that car stays in contention right to the very end. Patrick Mathiasen at the moment stuck there, as you see, in 16th overall behind Ewan Hankey. We've touched on the fact that championships can't be resolved. There is one that can be, and that's the Pro-Am in GT4, because really there's only that one car of Mia Fluid and Ewan Hankey in it, so it's a notional win. But in terms of the outright GT4 contest, that's going to go down to the wire, and it is still wide open, which is great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still at least 4, arguably 5 teams that could win the GT4 category, and the same therefore goes for the GT4 Silver Cup as well. So, including 2 of the cars in your shot here. And also, nice to see, almost joining in the fun, is the 42 car of Ben Tuck. Century Motorsport have had, by their usually high standards, a dismal season, really, haven't they? They had that one event at Brands Hatch where they suddenly found some speed, but everywhere else this year they seem to have been suffering a little bit, and that car is just creeping onto the tail of the Mustang train now, because Matt Cowley is defending well, all under pressure now. Ewan Hankey from the 58 of Patrick Mathiasen. We saw that a lot in race 1. You can get that tight line through Oggies, but getting the power down on the exit, that is the tricky bit, and that's where the wide line comes into its own.
Yeah, it looks as though Ewan Hankey just lost grip for a split second, and that gave the impetus. And there, absolutely on the ragged edge, is Jamie Caroline. He's always been an exciting driver to watch, sliding the car down through Brundle and Nelson, being chased by teammate Patrick Kibble. This is GT4. Their 3rd in the class is Matt Cowley. 4th, Ewan Hankey, and 5th, Patrick Mathiasen, who looks like he's got the pace, but he's a bit stuck at the moment as he comes into the bomb hole now. So through the right-hander, you can see Hankey defending. He's dropping back from Cowley, isn't he? That gives, to a degree, Matt a free ride. Now, what does he have to make up against the Astons ahead? Nearly 3 seconds to Patrick Kibble.
And Patrick Kibble is just over 5 seconds behind Jamie Caroline. Remember, both of those cars have success penalties to serve, but Kibble's success penalty is 5 seconds shorter than Caroline. So if they were to pick now, they would come back out absolutely together, and Tom Ferry would start having kittens, I think, after what's happened earlier on in the year. But there you can see that gap. It is now 5.5 seconds. Caroline to Kibble, Kibble to Cowley, 3.4 seconds, and then Cowley, Hankey and Mattiasen, as we documented, are still very, very close together. Then it's Ben Tuck behind them. Sam Spelt is ahead of Adam Hatfield now as well, so the Toyota has gained a few positions, but one proper position on the track, if you like, but still not quite on the pace yet, 15 seconds behind that group.
No, and for a car that's been struggling for traction all weekend, these are probably the worst conditions now. As I said earlier on, it's neither really proper wet nor certainly not dry. So that car in this no man's land as far as the weather is concerned. Now, what's interesting is that there are relatively more slower laps than quicker laps, if that makes sense. Not that many people are continuing to set personal best laps, which does suggest that the weather is deteriorating once more. Going on board with Angus Fender, the wiper is on. Now, there's nothing new in that, because most cars have had the wipers on race long, partly because of spray, but the pace of the race is not as quick for everybody as it was earlier. So I still think that the track conditions are worsening, and this could really be bad news for the AMs in that second stint.
It did look as though it was getting a little wetter out there, a little more spray maybe, particularly in the first half of the lap. The Snetterton 300 circuit, of course, covers quite a lot of ground, so it can often be slightly different at one end of the circuit than the other. Yeah, it did look like it was maybe deteriorating slightly. As there we have the change. Ewan Hankey is ahead of Matt Cowley now, and Cowley's been delayed somewhere there because he's now under even more pressure from Patrick Mattiasen, and this matters for the championship. Mattiasen goes to the inside, can't do it, goes to the outside. The Mustang, we know, is good in a straight line, but the McLaren should be better on the brakes. Can he find a gap around the outside? This is super close. Ewan Hankey is almost off the road as well, but I think Mattiasen has gone around the outside at Brundle. He's got the inside at Nelson, and the Mustang, we know, cannot get the power down on the exit of the corner. It tries to get its nose back on the inside, but Patrick Mattiasen having none of it, and he goes through. So 2 places lost for Cowley.
Matt Cowley, for a moment, I thought was just going to bulldoze him out of the way. That Mustang looms over the McLaren, doesn't it? He's got the inside, though, coming into Coram. Matt Cowley tries to get the place back. The Mustang has the room, but it's all sideways, fighting for grip. All of this, of course, is enabling Ewan Hankey to get away. Patrick Mattiasen is ahead, but then he breaks a fraction late coming to the end of the lap. That brings Cowley onto his tail. There's the very impressive Ben Tuck next in the queue as well. So as they head up towards the line, we've got 3 of them all squabbling now. HHC has lost 1 car, remember, out of the race already. Patrick Mattiasen has gained a place, but this is getting very, very leery between the 3 of them. Down towards Riches. Matt Cowley again, perhaps to line up for a go on the inside if he can find the room coming out of the corner. Patrick Mattiasen fending him off. He moves across, covers the line. Cowley thinks about the outside. He got it wrong here, didn't he, at the end of race 1 and lost some places. Ben Tuck is up with them, and Tuck could well now be the best chance for Mattiasen to get away, because if Matt Cowley has to go defensive, that would play into the hands of the McLaren.
It's funny, isn't it? Mattiasen looked quicker than Cowley when he was behind him, and now he's in front, he can't escape. It's just the pressure of having that car behind you, weaving around, distracting you, flashing the lights maybe. But now he's settled into a bit of a rhythm. Again, the McLaren, much better traction off Palmer. Interestingly, the BMW, which is a similar shape, similar design to the Mustang, front engine, big boxy GT4 car, and yet that seems to be able to get the power down a little better than its American equivalent.
Number 9, McLaren then going for a place. This is Angus Fender versus Ollie Wilkinson. Now, why is Ollie struggling in this race in a way that he wasn't in the first? Angus Fender, having had 1 off, he's back on track and going really well, because don't forget he's had to play catch up here, and he has caught, and he's now being held up by Wilkinson in the Optimum car, the 2Cs McLaren you're riding with. Lots of spray, and it's dirty spray now from a well-used track all day, being thrown into the face of Angus Fender. But as they come up towards the timing line, the 2Cs McLaren is, I think, ready to make its move. They could not be closer as they come past the pits then. Down towards Riches, to the outside line goes Angus Fender. He moves across to the inside, but that's the off-line way to try and get past, and he can't do it.
Takes a wide line in though. What about the run towards Wilson? He's carrying more speed off the corner. Wilkinson's a bit sideways, but there was a net gain there, I would say, for the orange Optimum car, which defends into Wilson. So wide, right out to that yellow line. Through the right-hander goes the number 9 car, but Fender still cannot get through.
We were discussing in the first race about how the McLarens were coping well with the conditions that I think it is fair to say were wet conditions, whereas these I would still label as greasy. McLarens are 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. No better than that. This would suggest these are not McLaren conditions.
Yeah, maybe in full wet conditions they can get the most out of their wet tyres, whereas now they're relying on the traction from the chassis itself and that power deployment that we mentioned earlier on that has been catching them out. So yeah, interesting. You would think on the face of it this should be a similar kind of race, but it's just that little bit less wet, and it is throwing a very different dynamic. This battle is still raging on. Jack Mitchell and Joe Osborne as there, Andrea Caldarelli is creeping back towards Jelmer Berman. This is interesting because Berman was pulling away from him in the earlier stages, and now Caldarelli is just starting to reel him in. On the previous lap, Caldarelli was 1.1 seconds quicker. He's only 1.6 seconds back at the start of the lap. It was a personal best for Caldarelli and a not personal best for Jelmer Berman. He was about a second off his best, so I wonder if maybe Jelmer had a little wobble out on circuit somewhere. Into the final corner they go then, and the gap continues to close.
And the Bentley has just rejoined the party. 7 laps down, there it is. Scott Malvern at the wheel. So primarily this, I think, really is to give Nick Jones the chance of some mileage. But, of course, if that car does enough laps to be classified and other people do not finish, it would gain some points. So need to see how it fares on distance, whether it will be classified as a finisher. But as the cars now turn their way up through Riches, Scott Malvern, he's not going to fight for places, but the car is in the race just to tick that off the record sheet, as it were. McLaren battle rages on still. 96, Ollie Wilkinson versus number 9, Angus Fender. So he sat behind him for another lap, being held up arguably by the Optimum car. Up now towards Riches, and again Fender tries that wide line in, but he's not close enough to then duck up the inside on exit, is he?
Yeah, he's going in on the wide line, but not carrying as much speed off the corner as Wilkinson on the tight line. He's always going too wide onto that green painted surface on the extreme left of the road. So he's got all the right ideas, but not quite executing it right at the moment. Fender will be getting increasingly frustrated here as well, because that car is now 40 seconds nearly away from the race lead. And of course their sister car got the team's first victory in race 1. And I'm sure there will have been a little rivalry there between the 9 and 10 squads as to who was going to get 2C's Motorsports' first ever British GT victory. It was the 10 car that got it, and the number 9 car will want to try and repeat that in race 2. Out of Agostini, again scrabbling for grip. In this section of the track, Fender closes back in again, but he can't really do anything about it. Oh, apart from almost running to the back of Ollie Wilkinson into Hamilton. Wilkinson was very slow through the left-hander, and now Fender does get to the preferred line. There's contact going into Oggies. Can he keep it on the road? Yes. Can he get a better run off the corner? Yes, but again, nowhere to go. The orange McLaren occupies the ideal line. That was a very tight squeeze.
Ollie Wilkinson looks like he's struggling, doesn't he? And you could offer an argument to say, just let him go, because the last thing you need is to get tangled up. You haven't got the pace. If this is going to end messily and you're out of the race, well, that doesn't help anybody. So if the car is genuinely quicker, let it go. Then your co-driver can do something in the second stint, because clearly Angus Fender is looking the quicker of the two at the moment. In fairness, Ollie Wilkinson is doing a good job of defending, but can he do it for much longer? Because now Fender goes to the inside line, down to Bombhold. He commits to the inside line, wait for the bang. It doesn't come, but it almost did. Fender gets a bit crossed up there as he goes through the corner. That was his best chance yet, but I think both of us there had a sharp intake of breath, waiting for the contact that mercifully didn't quite come.
There is no grip on the inside line into the bomb hole, and that is where Fender was, and it looked as though he was committing to the move. You're right, he's way quicker than Wilkinson, and you're also right, Wilkinson probably would be better served to let him go, but in fairness, they're not being caught by Michael O'Brien behind them. So, around goes Matt Cowley. Matt Cowley spins in the Mustang coming out of Oggies. We believe he's been on the grass, possibly at the preceding corner, Hamilton, and that takes him well and truly out of that fight. He was behind Mathiasen anyway, and he was ahead of Tuck at the start of the lap, so he has lost one position, but more importantly, David, a lot of time on the track, and we're going to see, I think, in a moment exactly what happened to him.
Here you go. So he gets the power down, slithers up onto the curb. Wet painted curbs don't help for traction, so that gets the car onto the grass. His tyres are very dirty indeed. Thankfully, he avoids the BMW, but as he comes back onto the road, around it goes. So no damage, dirty tyres for a lap or so, but Matt Cowley quickly gets back into a rhythm and actually did quite well, only to lose one place there.
Yes, he did. They were some way ahead of the next battle, but yeah, that's definitely lost him some time.
Can I take issue with an earlier statement? Because I reckon Michael O'Brien is catching these two now. At the time, you were absolutely right, but Ollie Wilkinson has done such a job of being the cork in the bottle, and Angus Fender is stuck, that Michael O'Brien, he's not with them yet, but he is certainly closer. The margin has been coming down, and he's managed to find another 7/10 in the first sector of this lap alone. So again, you've got the McLarens running together. They're all different teams, of course, representing the brand, but right now Michael O'Brien is joining the group as Phil Keane is self-isolating, really. He's on his own. He's got himself up through the GT4 traffic. There in second place is Sandy Mitchell, who, don't forget, has to serve when he hands over to Rob Collard another 7 seconds within the pit stop. And in third place, a long way back now, is there Jelmer Berman, who's got Andrea Caldarelli tucked up behind him.
Yeah, so the real race here, I suppose, is Keane back to Berman, because as you said, the car in between them has a success penalty. Fender eventually gets through at the bomb hole where we thought he wouldn't be able to overtake, but he made it stick this time. There was a little paint traded, I think, as he muscled his way through, but having spent 22 minutes nearly stuck behind the Optimum car, I think he will feel it was deserved.
So he's had a look one lap before, goes this time. There was contact, but I'm afraid to say that was probably the only way it was going to happen for Angus Fender. And in fairness, he was alongside anyway, so that contact was just a racing incident, wasn't it, really? Ollie Wilkinson had to try and claim a line for the corner, but there was a McLaren on the inside, and now we'll see how easy or otherwise Michael O'Brien finds it to get through past the Optimum car as well. Now, Jelmer Berman is a long, long way back from the race leaders, and part of the reason for that is he's very busy defending and keeping Andrea Caldarelli at bay. The Lamborghini here, not quite able to get the power down to mug the Mercedes, but right now Lamborghinis are running 1-2-4, aren't they?
Yes, and I'm going to correct myself. The race isn't necessarily between Barwell and Ram Racing, as I thought, because Berman is actually 10.3 seconds behind Sandy Mitchell. He's further back than I thought he was, and he's wider than Oggie's, so Caldarelli had another go at getting past him there. If we were to have the pit stops now, which we won't, we're only about 5 or so minutes away from that, the 78 Barwell car would still come out in second ahead of this pair, even with its 7-second success penalty. So the order is perhaps unlikely to change that much in the pit stops. The gaps may change slightly, but then of course so do the drivers. The slightly slower, notionally Am driver in Adam Ballon will get into the 72 car. As off goes Fender, I do not believe it. All of that hard work, 20 minutes of trying, he finally got past Ollie Wilkinson, and now he's got to do it all over again.
Because Ollie Wilkinson is through, and so is Michael O'Brien on the inside. So 1 up, 2 back for Angus Fender. Then another grassy moment. He's got good drive out of the corner. He has come up alongside Michael O'Brien, who will have the inside line going into the S's, but it'll be the outside line for the second element. So into Brundle they will come, and there's a bit more contact between the two as Michael O'Brien says, come on, give me a chance, give me a bit of a line. But round the outside goes Angus Fender, gets the place back. These McLarens are pretty durable cars, aren't they? Especially Angus Fender's car, because that's had quite a lot of wear in this race. He's gained one of those 2 lost places back. Michael O'Brien has to try and do that all over again, but Angus Fender is having a very spectacular race indeed.
The left-hand side of that number 9 car ain't going to be blue and black by the end of the day. It'll have bits of yellow, bits of white, bits of orange. It's been in the wars.
I was thinking it was the perfect livery, because it looks a bit like a bruise, doesn't it? It's blue and black. There it is. Out of the final corner comes then now Angus Fender, having got back ahead, but then comes into the pit lane.
Yeah, pit window is open now for GT3 because we are into past the 22nd minute of racing. So in comes the number 9 car, and this is for Angus Fender to get out. And jumping on board the number 9 car will be Dean McDonald. No success penalty to serve, which is just as well because they lost a lot of time in that ongoing battle with the Optimum car.
See the tear-off windscreen there, which is the car's version of what single-seater racing drivers have on their crash helmet visors. So rather than clean it, you just rip the windscreen off, go again, with all the mud and the dirt and possible oil and anything else that's been thrown into the face of the driver. There's the race leader, lest we forget. Phil Keane, who has done the fastest lap of the race, has dominated this stint. He's 8 seconds clear of Sandy Mitchell. So for Barwell, it's looking pretty good. Lap times still in a few cases are improving, but not consistently, so the road isn't necessarily any drier, nor is it any wetter than it has been. It's still in this halfway house situation. It's been a real challenge for the drivers within this opening stint, but it ain't going to get any better really for the AMs in the second part of the race. Dean McDonald then heads off into the race now. He will do the second stint in number 9 as Phil Keane accelerates on the Vert 1 drier line up towards the end of lap 12.
Yes, and he will no doubt stay out right to the end of the pit lane window. Cars 9 and 96 under investigation for one of the bits of contact that they had, probably the final move that was made by Angus Fender, although it matters little in a way because he very swiftly gave the place back. Joe Osborne spent the entirety of his stint staring at the very familiar to him, I'm sure, rear end of a McLaren 720S, that of Jack Mitchell. They're still scrapping over 6th place, but the gap that was 0.6 of a second at the start of the lap has been 0.6 of a second pretty much since the start of the race. They've been very close together. Traffic ahead. Will this give Osborne maybe an opportunity to move through? Again, you'd imagine Osborne will stay out there as long as possible to maximise the pro driver time.
Just keep an eye on number 10 McLaren for a moment, then think about the sister car, because we identified Angus Fender had lost the place back to Ollie Wilkinson. Well, an incident between those two is being investigated, so it might not necessarily all have been down to Angus Fender going off the road. He might have had an assist in all of that, so the officials are going to look at it. There's a lot to review, some of which will be done during, some of which will be done after the race. Meantime, Jack Mitchell 6th, Joe Osborne 7th. Michael O'Brien has pitted as well in McLaren number 2. Sam Smelt in the Toyota there you see about to go a lap down against the quicker GT3 cars as the Supra runs along to Agostini. There is Michael O'Brien morphing into James Baldwin in number 2.
Yep, not as surprised to see them in early, I suppose. And hopefully James will be able to find a bit more traction in the second stint. No traction for Joe Osborne there as he tried to get past Sam Smelt in the Toyota. Phil Keane trying to, well, this is a little busier than he'd like. He's just lapped the 95 GT4 Aston Martin, and now he's trying to lap Dean McDonald fresh out of the pit lane in the number 9 McLaren. He achieves both of those tasks, but definitely a little bit of time lost there. He's 9 seconds though at the start of the lap ahead of Sandy Mitchell, and remember the 78 car in second place will spend an extra 7 seconds in the pit lane, so that gap in reality is something like 16 seconds between the two of them once the pit stops are done. That is the gap that Rob Collard will have to try and bridge in order to try and get the second victory of the year for the 78 car. That, even for someone like Rob Collard, is a hard ask.
So it could well be, should well be on this evidence that Phil Keane and Adam Ballard become our first double winners of the season, unless we have dramas in the second part of the race that would generate a safety car and bunch up everybody once more. There is, if you like, the best of the rest of the non-Barwell run cars. It is the Ram Racing Mercedes of Jelmer Berman, who has got away slightly now from Andrea Caldarelli in 4th place. The gap was 9/10ths, it's now 11/10ths, so it's crept up further. 5th is still Patrick Kuyler, 6th and 7th here, Jack Mitchell ahead of Joe Osborne. The incident between Fender and Wilkinson, as you see, no further action taken by race control as Joe Osborne goes over the timing line, but he can't stay on the back of Mitchell, can he? He's dropped a second or so adrift. There is Phil Keane, still looking very strong indeed up front.
Far be it for me to question Phil Keane's driving, but that was a very strange line into Agostini. He took a very early apex, kind of diamond in the corner, which is a new approach to perhaps a Phil Keane wet line that he's discovered. He's done a few laps of the Snetterton 300 circuit over the years. Sure, he knows what he's doing, and he did lose time though on the previous lap. The gap came down by 1.5 seconds to Sandy Mitchell, so 7.5 is now the margin between the two of them. As getting ready for pit stops.
Yeah, that was Barwell, wasn't it? The GT4 pit window is open, but there are still some GT3 cars yet to serve, and one of them is going to be the leader. The other, of course, is 78, so the top two, both Barwell run cars. Their 57 look back into the race as well. The delayed Chris Westmail car, that is effectively 3 laps down on its class opposition. Phil Keane then out of the Brundle-Nelson sequence. And apart from traffic, and apart from the conditions, he's not had much to do in this stint, really, has he? Because he was able to make the break very early on. Once the tyres were up to temperature, he's been able to drive away from the pack. And Sandy Mitchell, in an identical car, has not been able to do anything at all about getting back up to the sister car, whereas Caldarelli's Lamborghini has got back up onto the tail of the Mercedes there, look, of Jelmer Berman. They are together again, having been 1.1 seconds apart at the start of the lap. I suspect you can put this down to traffic.
Yeah, there were some GT4 cars in the mix there, weren't there, as they came through Brundle and Nelson, one of the Century Motorsport BMWs, and so Jelmer Berman once again has to watch his mirrors. Andrea Caldarelli, who won earlier on in the season at Donington, as in comes Sandy Mitchell. Now this is important then, second place for Sandy Mitchell to hand over to Rob Collard. It is a minimum pit stop time of 70 seconds plus the 7 seconds success penalty, easy for me to say, that they got from their podium finish in race 1, and that has rather triggered a real flurry of activity. The Bentley is in, so too Jelmer Berman and Andrea Caldarelli then from 3rd, 4th and 5th position. Patrick Kuyler in as well.
So they were nose to tail on the track. They are in the pit lane. Look, Caldarelli almost pushing the Mercedes along. So in they come, and the Jelmer Berman, now Ian Loggy Mercedes, which was on the second row of the grid. There it is joined by the sister car. Patrick Kuyler brings 69 in. There is Joe Osborne to give way now to Stuart Proctor. Driver change in 10. That's got the extra 10 seconds to serve, don't forget. 5 seconds for the Ollie Wilkinson and Lewis Proctor, McLaren number 69, so sorry, number 96. So the pit straight, very empty because everybody now is in the pit lane. There's the Optimum orange McLaren, proper McLaren colour coming in, and a stop-go penalty for number 9, the Angus Fender Dean McDonald McLaren, for being short on the pit stop. So a stop-go penalty for car number 9 for being under the pit stop regulation time. There's an alert that goes, obviously, if it is short, you can measure it from triggering the beam at pit in to pit out. And if something doesn't look right, the timekeepers relay it to the race director, and Peter Daly will then issue a penalty if required. Back into the race goes then Ian Loggie's Mercedes. That will stay ahead of Michael Igoe. But of course, Rob Collard has dropped way back in the pack, having to serve that longer stop. Now there going out is Sam Dehaan, and Collard is going to be behind him. So what was second is now going to be fifth.
Yeah, that's a bigger time loss than I anticipated, so I'm not sure if there was an extra problem there for the Barwell team. But we'll try and get to the bottom of that. Anyway, in comes Phil Keane at the last possible moment, and this is to hand over to Adam Ballon. So once he has rejoined the circuit, in about a minute or so's time, we will know the proper picture at the front of the field. Out goes Lewis Proctor, sort of Stewart, who has just gone into the SRO Motorsports McLaren, and heads back onto the circuit just behind the number 2 car. So that obviously a couple of places lost because of their success penalty that they served. In GT4, we're still waiting for most of the field to come in. I think most of the teams feel they've got their quicker driver in the first stint. So whilst 1 or 2 have dived for the pit lane, Jordan Collard, for example, is now in the 58 McLaren, most of them staying out right to the end.
Done some quick maths looking at the last lap time for Rob Collard relative to other people that made a pit stop, and even if you take the 7 extra seconds off the time, the Barwell pit stop looks a bit like being round about 39 seconds slower than it needed to be, because yes, it should have been slower, but not by such a margin. So you take 7 seconds off the pit stop time that it has served, and it's still 39 seconds, give or take, slower than what you would anticipate it to be. So something happened in that pit stop that we don't know about. We might need to dispatch Kelvin down to that end of the pit lane.
Yeah, because they should have come out still second place once all this unravels, and they're not going to be second. They're going to be, as you said, towards the back of the top 5. Out comes Adam Ballon, no doubt about that. He will be your race leader. The big question is what the gap will be back to, I presume, Ian Loggie in the number 6 round racing car in second. Well, look, Ian Loggie is not even in sight. It's an empty racetrack coming out of the final corner. Where is the second place car? It is about to come through. There it is. Ian Loggie then, the number 6 car, is in second, but that gap's got to be upwards of 20 odd seconds, and still right behind is the WPI Motorsport car of Michael Igoe. Pro drivers have vacated both of these cars. It's the AMs that are in for the second stint, and that is true, in fact, of all of our top 3 cars.
These cars are half a minute behind Adam Ballon, so we've still got 26 minutes to go, admittedly, but half a minute to make up is a big gap. It underlines just how well Phil Keane had gone in that early stint. Now, next time around, as there, look, Igoe goes for second place. Is he going to be able to do it coming off the Wilson hairpin? He's not on the grippy part of the circuit, and he can't stay alongside. He nibbles the back of the Mercedes, switches sides, can't do it, slots back in at turn 3. Had he been alongside on the outside there, he'd have got the grip and might have got the place. As it happens, he can't do it. He has to sit back in behind. Now, what I was going to say, look at the gap opening up now, is that at the end of this lap, which is a proper flying lap for all of them, we'll start to see the pace of these drivers relative to Adam Ballon, and whether that gap can come down. As into service stop go comes number 9.
The trouble is, though, for Loggie and Igoe, the longer they delay each other battling over who gets to be in second place for the time being, the further away Adam Ballon will get. 31.2 seconds, as you said, is the margin. He's about to complete his middle sector on his outlap, of course, which is a 46.5, so that's about in the ballpark of what you'd expect. It's past the 43 BMW, which has yet to serve its pit stop, but again, still most of the GT4 field have yet to make their way down the pit lane. And Adam Ballon then at the circuit in which he enjoyed so much success last year, he and Phil Keane, it gave this team a huge championship lead going into the middle portion of the season, but then they never won again after that. They'll be hoping that this is not their final visit to the top step of the podium this year. The 72 car that came into this race 21.5 seconds off the championship points, off the championship lead. At the moment, looks as though that gap is going to come down.
Matt Cowley pits to give way to Will Moore. GT4 pit stop cycling through. The pressure is on Adam Ballon here, isn't it? We have seen him make the odd error on occasions, not suggesting he's going to, but he has made the odd slip in the past, because for an AM, these are big, powerful cars. In comes the Supra. So that is Sam Smelt to give way to James Kell. Car with Mickey Sargent as the team manager for the GT programme operating it. So Adam Ballon leads the way, so he's on his first proper flying lap since the pit stop. Number 9 after the stop go is back on track. 95 Aston Martin currently is second in GT4. We'll get back to the GT4 battle in a moment or two, because right now the fascination is on whether or not Ballon is going to be caught by Ian Loggie. We need to start looking at sector times and lap times. and a flying lap from Adam Ballon there was a 2:15. Well, Ian Loggie's last one was a 2 minutes 9, so straight away your 31-second gap is down to 25.
Yes, but that is now the outlap completed for Ballon, so
True, yeah.
sector times that come in now will be a little more relevant, but the first sector of the next lap, a 40.4, doesn't look all that rapid, so considering Ian Loggie on the previous lap did a 39.9, so I think Loggie and therefore Igo may be quicker than Ballon, but is the starting point too much for them to overcome? I mean, 25 seconds over 25 minutes, a second a minute is not going to be easy to do, but the closer they get to him, the more pressure he'll be under, the more likely he is to make a mistake. This ain't over yet.
Yeah, because another 6 tenths are taken out in one sector alone, so it's possible. Let's go to GT4 for a moment, as in comes 97 then, so this is the class leading car, but it's got to serve an extra 10 seconds having won race 1. So is that going to be advantage to 95, or indeed to the number 58 McLaren, which is in as well? Jordan Collard will give way, will take over from Patrick Matisse in 57. He's back in Chris Westmail, Gus Bauer's car. Away goes the Supra. It's a good noise, that car. Out gets Ewan Hankey of 21. Away goes 43 BMW to be quickly replaced by number 42. So as Adam Hatfield heads off down the pit road, Ben Tuck arrives.
Don't discount Valve Motorsport for this GT4 battle either. Remember, as the only non-Silver Cup entrant in GT4, their pit stops are 14 seconds shorter than the Silver cars. And I don't think they were 14 seconds off the lead, certainly when you add in the success penalties for TF Sports cars. That 21 car with Mia Fluitt on board for the second stint could be right in the lead pack.
But then you need to monitor her pace relative to the second drivers in the other cars. So, yeah, it'll be up there, but whether it stays there remains to be seen. But with only 22 and a half minutes to go, there's relatively little time for the others to claw back time lost in the pits. 58 here now. Jordan Collard has taken it over, and mission is to get the car as high up GT4 as possible, maybe for a win. Adam Ballon is 22.9 seconds ahead, so 25 it was, 23 it is. It's coming down, but I don't think it's coming down by enough, is it?
It's about 2 seconds in a lap, isn't it? And they're going to get about another 9-10 laps-ish, aren't they? Yeah. So it's going to be close. It's going to be very close, isn't it? 22 seconds or 23 seconds at the moment, and as I said, there's no guarantee that will stay at 2 seconds a lap. Right, GT4 cars leaving the pit lane. 97 and 95 should be close, but I think 97 should stay ahead. But of course, they've both been leapfrogged there by the 50, or will they be leapfrogged by the 58 McLaren, because that is coming through Coram. Yeah, it's going to be tight, this.
I don't think they are. I think they're going to stay ahead. That had 7 seconds to serve extra, didn't it? Away goes Mia Fluitt, so she is ahead of the Astons, as you predicted. But I think on pace, they're going to get the position back, aren't they, within the next 4 or 5 laps. So 97 stays ahead of 95. In the background, look, here comes number 58 McLaren on the track. You see it now coming over the brow on the pit straight. But it has fallen back behind both of the TF Astons then. So Jordan Collard throwing everything at this, just like his dad is doing in GT3 further up the road. So the two Collards in the same stint. Jordan accelerating sideways up towards the curb out of Riches, and don't forget he's already in a rhythm. He knows what the track is like, whereas Conor O'Brien and also Dan Vaughan are fresh into the car. So on this lap they're not only trying to go as fast as they can, but they're trying to learn what the car feels like and where the grit is on the road. Yeah, the two Collards finished second in each of their respective classes in race 1, and they both sit second in their respective championship battles as well. So the Collards, be it son Jordan or father Rob, both doing well in the British GT Championship this year. There is Mia Fluitt there. Mia Fluitt in the Balf Motorsport car. As I said, they won this race at Alton Park earlier on in the year, and it was the second race that they won. And they won it because Ewan Hankey built out a nice lead at the start, took advantage of some success penalties for other cars, and then we had a safety car for about 20 minutes, which did rather help. But my point is that they are on the same course now that they were on at Alton Park. Very different conditions, of course, but let's see if she can hang on. So where's the safety car then? Yes. Yes, I take your point. The other thing is, of course, Mia Fluitt gets quicker the more time she has in the car. So it's a better Mia Fluitt now than it was at Alton. You could construct an argument to say. The pit window is now closed for GT4 cars, and this is Ian Loggie in the Ram Racing Mercedes, who is still hustling on. 21.1 seconds it is, so it is 2 seconds a lap, but is that enough? Ideally, he needs Adam Ballon to get caught up behind traffic and or make a mistake and or a safety car to come out. But it is going to be close, but I'm not convinced that without an error, without a drama, Adam Ballon is going to be caught. Their third is Michael Igo, who has dropped back a little bit, and he's being reeled in, is he not, now by Sam DeHaan? So they're number 69 Mercedes, which had to serve the extra time in the pit lane. Sorry, no, it didn't have to serve. It did in race 1, it didn't for race 2. That car is in the mix now as well, 3.2 seconds back. and he's quicker in sectors. So yeah, Dahan is on for a podium here.
And importantly, they've leapfrogged the 78 Lamborghini, haven't they? So in race 1, 78 took points out of them, got the gap down to 1 point at the top of the championship table, but now Dahan is ahead of Collard. On the previous lap was a second and a quarter quicker, and is catching Loggy and Igo in front of him. So it's an exact role reversal of what we saw in race 1. As sailing round the outside goes Gus Bowers. This is not for position. Bowers is laps down after the off that they had on the opening lap, but it does go to show the difference in pace between a bronze graded driver in Mere Fluid and a silver graded driver in Gus Bowers,
who sadly lost 4 laps early on after the incident with the Bentley here, coming through Brundle and Nelson. Right, this is Sam Dahan's view then, still pushing on. So both the Ram Racing Mercedes showing good pace, and out of the leading group, Sam Dahan is the fastest of the leading 4. He did a personal best lap last time, so although we're getting excited about Ian Loggy closing on Adam Ballon, the fastest man in this leading quartet is here, Sam Dahan then, number 69 Mercedes. Up onto the pit straight, he now comes, accelerates up through the gears, heading towards the line. Adam Ballon has gone through. That last lap was another 2 minutes 10, so he's maintaining the lead, he's preserving the lead, but it's down from 21 seconds to effectively 19 seconds. 18.9 is the margin then, so again, another 2 seconds a lap taken back by Ian Loggy.
But it's consistent, isn't it? In a way for Ballon, this is good. If he started pushing harder and made a mistake, he could lose 4 or 5 seconds in a lap. So he's driving within himself, he's driving to his limit, but not beyond it. And if he can limit it to 2 seconds a lap, that might just be enough. Sam Dahan on the previous lap was 0.8 of a second quicker than Michael Igo. In race 1, remember, 69 finished 5th, 78 finished 2nd. That's why the gap went down. Well, 78 are 5th at the moment, and there's every chance 69 could finish 2nd. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if when we leave Snetterton, the gap at the top of the championship table is exactly the same as it was when we came here, because you can kind of, trying to get my crystal ball out now, work out how the rest of this race is going to go. But it does look as though he is catching the 2nd and 3rd place cars just in front. Through Hamilton he comes. Doesn't go anywhere near the apex, because that's not where the grip is in this second stint. That little rain shower we had in the first stint has definitely meant that wet tyres are the way to go for the second stint as well. So I don't think anyone has taken that particular gamble. Out of the final corner comes the battle for GT4 second place. Jordan Collard has caught Conor O'Brien. In fact, he's done more than that. He's pulling out to pass him. Look at the straight line speed that McLaren has. He breezes past the Aston Martin, which is then later on the brakes into Rich's corner. Conor O'Brien won't want to give this up. He's scrambling for grip on the inside. Right round the outside goes Jordan Collard, and an overtake that his father would have been proud of. He gets into second place and is lapping quicker at the moment than Dan Vaughan, the race leader, by over a second a lap.
Adam Ballon, incidentally, on this lap lost a lot of time, like a second's worth in the first sector of the lap alone. Now, it might have been traffic, might have been a moment, but the gap should be down. As you see there, Michael Igo in 3rd place, their 4th still is Sam Dahan. So Adam Ballon has just gone across the line. It was another lap in the 2 minute 10s. I think he was able to regroup in the second sector, but the first sector did seem to be slow. Now, that, as I say, could be, you can put that down to the traffic. Here comes Ian Loggy. Now, last time when they broke the beam, it was just under 19 seconds. It is now 17.4, so a bit more than the 2 seconds pullback on that lap then. So Ian Loggy is still charging, but I fear he's going to run out of time.
Possibly, yes. In the middle sector, Loggy was slightly slower than Ballon, so whatever the traffic was that held Ballon up, I presume, also held up Loggy. It might have been the 43 BMW. There's more GT4 traffic for them to deal with in front. That is James Kell now in the Speedworks Toyota. The gaps between Loggy and Igo not really changing, and actually Sam Dahan on the previous lap was slower than Igo, so the charge that the 69 car was making has rather hit a bit of a brick wall at the moment, but let's see if he can continue to inch towards them. Really important that he does, actually. It's important that they at least match what the 78 car did in race 1. If they don't, obviously that will be a net loss over the course of the weekend, as Toyota isn't really leaping out of the way here. Ian Loggy's going to have to make an awkward overtake into Hamilton. He's going to be on the slippery side of the road, but Michael Igo can't get through at all, so it mattered little in the end. Although Loggy was low on grip through the corner, he still gains time.
He does indeed, with Igo chasing on behind him. Rob Collard, incidentally, after that mysteriously slow pit stop, he's still down in 5th place, and off the road goes number 10 then. So Jordan Witt having a moment. He drove an absolutely brilliant first race, little off there coming out of turn 3, back on track now. There is Will Moore, who took over from Matt Cowley, who had a rotation in the first stint, and the Mustang currently is in 5th in GT4 as they're heading into the S's. Igo closing up under braking. Sam Dahan is almost with them again.
We've had a change for the GT4 lead, by the way. Dan Vaughan has got himself ahead of Mia Fluid, so TF Sports 97 car is now in the lead, but they have both been significantly caught by Jordan Collard. Jordan Collard was 3.5 seconds quicker than Dan Vaughan on the previous lap. I guess Dan was being held up by Mia for a part of that lap. Mia has no obligation whatsoever to step out of the way. That was a genuine fight for position, but it has really cost the 97 car a heap of time. It's the 97 car, remember, that leads the championship. It's the 58 car that is second, so we are, before too much longer, going to have the top two cars in GT4 on the track absolutely together, as they are in the points.
And in GT3, a better lap done by Adam Ballard there. Only 3/10 lost to Ian Logie, who comes up to lap Will Moore. So I think Adam Ballard now is perhaps feeling more comfortable in the car, because he's doing the sort of lap times that the opposition is doing, rather than losing time. Okay, he's lost a few tenths, but it's a comparable pace. So Adam Ballard, I think, now is into a rhythm. He's feeling happier, he's feeling confident, and he's also getting the message to push if he can, which means that with 17.1 seconds now being the margin, it is looking very much as though we're going to get our first double winners of the year in GT3. That was Mia Fluid coming under attack again. Look, because now Conor O'Brien looking to go through. That means Jordan Collard is already past the Balve McLaren. So it is Vaughan versus Collard for GT4 honours. The big flash of the lights, and there is the class lead about to change possibly. Collard pulls out, has a look, trying to unsettle Dan Vaughan coming down towards Brundle and Nelson. This is a great stint by Jordan Collard, isn't it? Absolutely charging. And so the McLaren now comes right up onto the tail of the Aston Martin, looks for the inside line. Door is closed by Dan Vaughan, but is that going to put him on the wrong line out of the corner? The McLaren just looking so much stronger. Comes to the outside line into Coram. Has he found the grip there? It's going to be close, going to be tight, but no. Aston has the advantage, at least for the moment.
9.5 points between these two in the Aston Martin's favour. So for Jordan Collard, this is the most important overtake that he's going to make all day, and he's made a lot of overtakes already in this race. Gets a much better run out of Murray's, and we know that McLaren is very, very quick through the speed traps. Gets his nose in front. Officially, the 58 car will lead at the line. In fact, forget officially, you can see it with your eyes. He has cleared the Aston Martin before they get anywhere near the braking zone. Dan Vaughan will therefore try to exploit the handling advantage that you would expect the slower car in a straight line to have, but McLaren seems to have the corner speed covered as well. Was a bit slow off Riches there, so Vaughan can force the 58 car to defend. That's the slippery side of the road into Wilson. The Aston should be quicker off the corner, but it's not. The traction from that McLaren is good, and it looks as though Collard's got that one made.
I mean, the way that he caught up, worked his way through the traffic, you should expect him now to get away, and he comes on that wider line through turn 3. Interesting that the Aston doesn't, so Dan Vaughan, I reckon, will lose a length or two there. Yes, he does, purely because he didn't have the grip through the corner to the same level that the McLaren did. You can also see how much drier the road is now than it was earlier, so there's very little spray being generated there, but Jordan Collard, a little bit deep into Agostini. Does that cost him a length? Yes, it does. The HHC McLaren then in front now in GT4, going for a class win, which would be its second of the year for Charlie Kemp and Jody Hemming's team. But Jordan Collard, yeah, very, very impressive stint indeed.
And they're both being caught now by Conor O'Brien. If O'Brien gets past Vaughan, that will give the championship lead to the HHC car. They are at the moment not quite doing enough to take the lead away, but if the 95 car falls down one more place, they will be. Second place battle in GT3 here. Ian Logie and Michael Igoe still together, but Sam Dahan is only 2.8 seconds behind them now. Although that's not actually a huge difference, is it? It was about 3.5 last time I checked, and that was a good 10 minutes ago. So Sam Dahan, even if he can get there, I don't think he's got enough extra speed over these two that he'll be able to easily breeze past them. There you can see him in the distance. And Rob Collard, actually, if anything, is lapping slightly quicker than him.
Yeah, and a slower lap last time for the leader, Adam Ballard. So he's back into the 2-minute 10 mark. Now, he only has to win by 1,000th of a second. So he does still lead, and he has got 15 seconds still in hand with 10 minutes to go. They're not going to catch him unless Ballard has a big drama somewhere. But right now, with Igoe looking quicker than Logie and a battle developing, that should play into the hands of Sam Dahan, shouldn't it? Except his sector times are ebbing away. Is that traffic?
Could be. Certainly this pair are catching some GT4 cars again, aren't they? Michael Igoe sniffing up the inside again, trying to unsettle Ian Logie, but Loggie's been in this game for a while now. He doesn't make many mistakes, and he's a bit wide over the curve going out of the bomb hole, but yeah, this number 6 car in the first sector was 8 tenths quicker than Ballard. He was another 3 tenths quicker in the middle sector. It's going to be another 2 seconds this time, isn't it? That one lap, though, where Logie was not quite as quick as Ballard, that might be his undoing. Just under 10 minutes to go, so 4 or 5 laps remaining.
It's partly that, and it's partly this car that won't go away, because there are laps on which Ian Logie has to defend, and straight away with the more defensive lines, he's giving away some of that pace, some of that time. So the gap between the pair of them is 4/10. The gap between the leaders is 14 seconds. It's come down by just under a second on that last lap. So it is still advantage Ballon. Through the traffic goes Ian Loggy. Again, so near, but yet so far from a win, isn't he, in this Mercedes? Michael Igo with Andrea Caldarelli, one at Donington. They're going to be third here, seemingly, as number 42 BMW tries to get out of the way. Andrew Gordon-Colebrook at the wheel of it. And now to the inside goes Igo, but there's less grip there, so it's not the place to try.
Yeah, it goes to the inside. It looks great. It's so inviting, isn't it? There's all this real estate on the inside, and a racing driver's instinct is to go to the inside. But although you can draw alongside going into the corner, it's almost impossible to get the power down. Coming off, Loggy is sideways into Agostini, though. That tricky, awkward left-hander. Loggy was sideways into Agostini. Igo was sideways out of Agostini. So in the end, nothing really changes. The gap's still a car length or so as they head towards Hamilton. First sector on this lap. They pretty much match each other. They're both 4/10 quicker than Ballon was, but 4/10 is not really enough.
Although in the first sector, Rob Collard has just done the absolute best of anybody in terms of a speed through the speed trap. Now to the inside line goes Igo, out wide goes Loggy, he's off the road. Igo goes through, Loggy goes gardening, and he's going to lose another place if he's not careful to Sam Dehaan as the Mercedes bounces back towards the tarmac. There is Dehaan alongside him and goes through. And what about the next car in the queue of Rob Collard? It's going to be close. Ian Loggy will be ahead, but Rob Collard is going to be much, much closer. And they get to the end of Bentley Straight because Loggy's going to get stuck behind the BMW. He's already passed it once. He's going to do it again. But that was just a tiny, tiny error by Ian Loggy, wasn't it? Slightly offline, and then the car sort of gets pulled onto the grass.
Yeah, the man I said half a lap ago doesn't make many mistakes. Oh well, that was an easy mistake to make though. In fact, didn't Yelmer Bourbon make that mistake in the first race?
Yes, absolutely, same corner, same everything. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
So if Yelmer Bourbon can do it, then it's no surprise, I suppose, that Ian Loggy might make the same mistake now. Significantly, Sam Dehaan has gained a position out of that, so the championship leader is now into third place overall. Equally significantly, though, their nearest rivals, the 78 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini, could also benefit. They haven't yet got past Ian Loggy, but Loggy will have dirt on his tyres. Psychologically, he'll be kicking himself when he made that mistake. He might be a bit more cautious now, so as not to have a repeat moment. And Rob Collard really could do with deploying all of those years of touring car experience to forge an overtake here.
But what's going to be interesting now is the situation between the leaders, because even allowing for that battle, the gap is down anyway from 14.1 to 12.9. And it's now a Lamborghini chasing a Lamborghini. Can Michael Igo do any better in catching than Ian Loggy did? Let's find out after we've heard from the pits and Kelvin.
Hey, Sandy. You guys are doing so well. Unfortunately, there was a big issue during the driver change. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, I think we lost about 20 seconds in the pit stop. We had a mess up with the belts between us, so yeah, that cost us a lot of time, and obviously safety is the main thing, so we need to make sure that they're definitely done up and all good before we send Rob out. And yeah, a mistake in terms of the belts going behind the seat insert and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, disappointing and a mistake that we shouldn't be making. And yeah, unfortunately, it's cost us a P2 in this race. But Rob's last couple of laps have been really fast, and he's getting back in the mix. So we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, I know obviously we get a chance to practice those sort of driver changes quite a bit, but there's always things that you just, no matter how much practice you get, you just sometimes get a bit of bad luck. And yeah, I understand how frustrating it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been doing hot driver changes in every practice session and qualifying, and it's all gone well. And like you say, whenever the heat of the moment, things can change. So yeah, that's the way it is. So yeah, we'll see how the last 5 minutes pan out.
Yeah, bad luck.
Yeah, thanks, Kelvin. David, you're absolutely right about Michael Igo. I think he's going to take more than 2 seconds out of Adam Ballon on this particular lap. That gap could be down to single figures for the first time. Although a decent lap for Ballon, a 2 minutes 9.623. Igo about to flash across the start-finish line at 2 minutes 7.6. So it was bang on 2 seconds. It's 10.9 seconds between the two of them. Third Dehaan, fourth Ian Loggy, but for how much longer? Rob Collard in the second Barwell Lamborghini needs to get on with this. Takes the wide line into Rich's headlights ablaze, 5 minutes to do it, but if anyone can overtake, you'd put some money on Rob Collard being able to do it.
Oh yes, you would, absolutely right. And Sandy Mitchell showing his frustration, trying to be corporate about it, but the frustration, I'm afraid, he couldn't totally keep out of his answers, could he? And you can understand why. There is Adam Ballon then, through the traffic, getting past the Aston Martins, 97 Dan Vaughan, 95 Conor O'Brien. Now, we've got 11 seconds effectively between the top two, but only 4.5 minutes. Igo's not going to get there in time, but it does make you wonder what could have happened had he been able to get past Ian Logie sooner. All these ifs and buts. Adam Ballan's pace maybe isn't as good as those behind, but he's still clear and he's got enough in hand to take the win, because we've only got probably time for 2 more laps at the end of this.
The worst thing that Barwell can do here is tell Adam Ballan what's going on, because as soon as he hears that this gap is coming down by 2 seconds a lap, he will start to push too hard and make mistakes. He's also now got a slightly trickier back marker to get past, hasn't he? Because that is the Ferrari of Duncan Cameron, which is a lap down, yes, but it is a GT3 car, so Ballan isn't going to have that natural speed advantage to simply breeze straight through. This might cost him a bit more time.
It will, but equally, Michael Igo has got to get past these 2 Aston Martins. He's got to catch them yet. He's got to get past them as well, and also he in turn will have to get past Duncan Cameron. So in a sense it should equate. You might lose a little bit of time depending on where you catch the cars, and Adam Ballan of course can afford to be a little bit more cautious through the traffic because he's got the race lead and he doesn't want to blow it, whereas Michael Igo can't take any chances. He has got to be whatnots to the wall here to try and bring down that gap as best he can, but there's going to be 2 more laps to go, so Adam Ballan will cross the timing line. The margin was 10.9 seconds. They're going through is Conor O'Brien, and for GT4 honours this is second and third, don't forget. This is Dan Vaughan versus Conor O'Brien. Now they tangled at Brands Hatch, they're 2 seconds apart, the gap is coming down, but for the race lead it's gone from 10.9 to 9.7. It's going in the right direction. We just need this to be a 90-minute race.
And there's an idea. Yes, 3 minutes to go though, so only 2 more laps, and 4.5 seconds a lap ain't going to happen, is it? So Adam Ballan, barring mistakes, barring any late drama for that 72 car, they should be our first double winners of the year, potentially. There they go. I think Ballan's probably dealt with the last of the traffic now as well. There's quite a lot of clear track in front of him. He's got past Duncan Cameron, he's got past the GT4 leader Jordan Collard, and Adam Ballan with his windscreen wipers still going. There may still be a bit of rain in the air, certainly a bit of spray from the GT4 cars that he's just lapped. This has been a really, really good performance for Barwell. The sister car may have lost time in the pit stops, but it was a perfect stop for 72, a perfect opening stint for Phil Keane, and that has put Adam Ballan in a position where, crucially, he didn't have to push too hard in the second stint. If he'd have come out of the pit lane 15 seconds ahead of the opposition, the pressure would really have been on, and that's sometimes where the AM driver can run into difficulties. But Adam's been able to pace himself, work to a sort of mid 2-minute 9 or a 2-minute 10 lap time each and every time, deal with the traffic in his own time, and that ultimately is what could win them the race.
Yeah, it was a great first stint by Phil Keane, wasn't it? Without any dramas whatsoever, pushing, building up the lead, and a perfect pit stop, whereas the sister car, as you say, had the seatbelt problems. For 72 it was a belter, but this car now with 9.7 seconds in hand, being caught by the rival Lamborghini of WPI, different team, don't forget. And Michael Igo, we said it at the end of race 1, he has done relatively little racing in terms of numbers of years. He has done a huge amount of miles in a short space of time, and boy is he taking the battle here to Adam Ballan, because you look at the way the car has sort of picked up its skirts and he's going about its business, and you think it's Calderelli at the wheel.
Yes, exactly. Michael Igo is a really decent driver, it must be said, but he's getting well and truly held up here by Dan Vaughan, the second-placed GT4 car. He took a second out of Ballan in the first sector, lost most of that in the middle sector. He's probably lost the rest of it and some in the final sector. It's a 2 minutes 9.9 for Ballan, and for Michael Igo, he will come across the start-finish line and do a 2 minutes 10.0, so a tenth slower. Zahan is still third, 3.3 seconds behind Igo, so again not likely to catch him. If anything, Ian Logie is coming back at him and getting away from Rob Collard, but Logie goes to the inside of the 95 of Conor O'Brien. That was a bad move, because look at the extra speed Rob Collard has on the exit. Can he find a gap on the inside? No, goes to the outside, but there's a GT4 Aston Martin there. How is this going to work out? 3 into 1 rarely goes. The Aston Martin stays out of the way. Collard tries the switchback, can't quite find a gap. Logie hangs on.
Last lap, Rob Collard running out of chances then to get 4th overall away from Ian Logie. This is turn 3, this is Palmer through the left, and again you see go to the outside line, find the grit. Rob Collard gets all sideways, corrects the slide, back onto the power, move across to the inside there, just get a bit more of the wet part of the road, keep the tyres nice and cool. Collard brakes late, Logie slides out wide. Does Rob Collard get the drag out of the corner? Can he get the power down? No, he can't. The Mercedes hangs onto the place, but it's all very touch and go, isn't it, in these greasy conditions. Drivers still tiptoeing around. Just when you think you've got the grip, accelerate, the car tries to snap away Adam Ballon, though, is 9.8 seconds to the good, and Adam Ballon and Phil Keane are heading for their second victory of the season.
Yes, and a nice juicy 25 championship points to bring them virtually onto the tail of the top two, with just one 3-hour race to go at Silverstone, but there are still places to be settled further back. There goes Ballon out of Brundle and Nelson for the final time, excuse me. It's going to be another Pro-Am victory. They've had a few of them in recent memory, but their second overall race victory of the season. And at the circuit at which they won both races last year, it's almost fitting that they are going to become the first double winners in GT3 this year. At the same venue, Rob Collard, his teammates, still trying to do something, anything about Ian Logie in front of him, but it is all about the number 72 car. Phil Keane put in a fantastic opening stint. Adam Ballon has brought it over the line to win the penultimate round, round number 8 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. A fantastic display there from the whole team. Michael Igoe is second for WPI, and third position for Sam Dahan and Patrick Kuyula. They will retain the championship lead going to the Silverstone showdown. Ian Logie and Rob Collard 4th and 5th respectively, so Collard could not find a way through. And a solid 6th place about to be claimed here by James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien. We saw very little of them, but some decent points there in 6th. I'll do the maths in a moment to see if they're still in championship contention. Here comes Mia Fluitt. She is going to win the Pro-Am category in GT4, but perhaps more significantly, 4th place overall in GT4. The GT4 leaders have seen the flag already, with Jordan Collard the winner, Dan Vaughan and Conor O'Brien for TS Sport 2nd and 3rd. Again, that will tighten the championship up quite nicely. The 58 car was behind coming in, but has just gained back a whole load of points by the end of the race. Jordan Witt appears to have lost a place on the final lap. He's fallen from 7th to 8th behind Lewis Proctor, with a very slow lap. So I fear that there was time for one more off-track excursion, maybe, for a 2Cs Motorsport McLaren. Then the 9 car comes home in 9th place, and that is pretty much it. So Barwell, we know they go well at Snetterton, come rain or shine, but they do have this habit, don't they, at the end of the season, of letting it all kind of slip away. But this year, I think the fact that Snetterton is so much later in the calendar than normal has really played into their hands. Yes, they would have probably still got these kind of results if we were here at the start of the year, but psychologically speaking, puts them on a real high going to the decider.
But wasn't it Silverstone last year, early in the 3-hour race, where they tangled at Village? The Barwell Lamborghinis got themselves all in a bit of a muddle, so Mark Lammer will be very keen that nothing like that happens. But it is going to be a fabulous showdown in both GT3 and GT4. It is wide open in both classes, and Adam Ballon, who, like many of the AMs, to be fair to him, gets better and better season after season, came through the GT4 ranks into GT3, and is now a very accomplished driver within British GT. And Phil Keane, who has been the bridesmaid in this series for so many years, might have a chance of being champion at the end of 2020. We'll find out on the 8th of November. The last race of the season will be at Silverstone. It's 3 hours, and your company on the live stream will enable you to follow all the action. So, to run through the results, it is a win for Phil Keane and Adam Ballon. Andrea Caldarelli and Michael Igoe take 2nd ahead of Patrick Kuyula and Sam Dahan in 3rd. Jelmer Burman and Ian Logie 4th ahead of Sandy Mitchell and Rob Collard. 6th going the way of Michael O'Brien and James Baldwin. The race 1 winners, Jordan Witt and Jack Mitchell, 8th overall. And if you head down to 12th, you find the GT4 winning McLaren from HHC Motorsport of Patrick Mathieson and Jordan Collard. It's Aston Martin 2nd and 3rd, Jamie Caroline and Dan Vaughan from Conor O'Brien and Patrick Kibble. Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluitt 4th in GT4, but effectively now the Pro-Am GT4 champions with limited opposition. The best of the BMWs next, Ben Tuck and Andrew Gordon-Colebrook. And, of course, dramas early on for Scott Malvern and Nick Jones, tangling with Chris Westmail and Gus Bowers in the 2nd of the HHC McLarens, compromising the race of both of those two teams. But another very lively hour. You could argue that up front it was a runaway win for the number 72 Lamborghini, but a lot happened behind, and it was never a guaranteed victory, certainly in that second stint, because the gap was every lap bar 1 coming down.
Yeah, exactly. And had there been a bit more traffic, or had maybe the 18 car got past critically, I think that's what it was. If Igoe had got past Logie 2 or 3 laps earlier, it might have made a huge difference. I mean, yes. Say if he'd had another 3 or 4 laps maybe to really charge after Ballon, he might well have got there, but sadly just ran out of time. In GT4, as we said, it is HHC that take the victory. I've done some very quick maths, or my computer has more to the point. And the championship league, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. 6 points, I reckon, is all that's in it now between Ram Racing and Barwell Motorsports. So it does go out by those extra 5 points in that one, but 6 points is the difference between first and second on the road at Silverstone. So it's in a way winner takes all between the two of them. 4 teams, by my calculations, are still within that critical 37.5 point bracket. 37.5 points available for the win at Silverstone. The other 2 being the car that just won, 72, Adam Ballon and Phil Keane. They're on 125 points, so what's that, 10.5 off the championship lead. And the number 2 car is just still in with a chance, but they would need a little bit of outside assistance, I think, to take the victory, to take the championship at Silverstone. In GT4, meanwhile, it is an enormous 2.5 points that will separate the top 2 in the championship. 97, 2.5 points ahead of 58, and they are a further 10.5 ahead of the 95 TF car. And again, I think it's going to be about 4 cars in contention for that one as well. So Silverstone is not to be missed, David.
Can't wait. There's a lot of racing to happen before then for different categories. Many of these drivers will be on many a duty, whether it's in GT World Challenge Europe or other GT championships, but it does promise, as you say, to be a fabulous championship showdown. And at the end of the race, it was only 7 seconds between Adam Ballon and Michael Igoe, both, and in fact, in fairness, Sam DeHaan third, all much improved drivers as they spent more time coming through the championship. And of course, this is where having a good co-driver helps. It's not just about the co-driver being quick in his own right, it's about Johnny Adam, to use an example, is one of the great masters of this, helping your co-driver to come on and get more out of him. So you're not only dependent on the pace of the pro, you can bring the AM almost up to your level. And season on season, the likes of Adam, Michael, Sam DeHaan, Ian Logie is another example, get quicker and quicker and quicker. And Adam Ballon, a really good drive there, didn't put a wheel wrong, did he? He just did exactly what he had to do, keep the gap, don't take risks, don't make mistakes, and brought it home. So we'll have the winning teams making their way shortly to the trophy area. And the other teams there starting, if you're not in Parc Fermé conditions, to get the cars into the garages. But yeah, 3 hours of Silverstone on the full Grand Prix circuit in what are, I suspect, we could probably label as challenging conditions in mid-November. The sun does shine at Silverstone in November. Don't totally write it off as being a winter warmer meeting, but I think the expectation is it's going to be a bit on the inclement side.
And it's going to add an extra dynamic to the championship decider as well, that so frequently in recent years has taken place at Donington Park. Having it at a different circuit, that could really throw an extra spanner into the works. Right, let's head down then and speak to our winners and championship contenders. SRO Motorsports, Adam Ballon and Phil Keane are down there with Kelvin.
Hey guys, Phil, that first stint, I mean, that looked like absolute perfection. I think it was a correct mix of aggression, but you seem quite sensible as well. You obviously built something like a 35-40 second lead. How did you feel in the car?
Well, it didn't feel that easy. You know, obviously Sandy drove really well in qualifying, and I didn't do the best I could have done. So starting from second was always going to be tricky, and I was sort of lucky really, because obviously being on the outside you get a bit more grip, and he braked a little bit early because he wouldn't have had the grip. So he was sensible. So thanks for not ramming into the side of me. And I managed to get past around the outside, and then I just got my head down and pushed as hard as I could to try and build a lead.
And then obviously you pass over to Adam. Adam, the job wasn't done then, you had to finish and bring it home. How did you feel about that stint? You must have been happy. Surely your eyes now are looking forward to the last round at Silverstone, and you've nearly done it. Not quite yet, but it's nearly there.
Yeah. Well, no, I had the much easier job. Obviously, Phil pulled out a great lead, but I still had to bring it home. And I made a mistake in the first race, so I was really conscious of not doing the same again. But I managed to sort of stay on the black stuff and bring it back. So I was very pleased.
Well done, guys.
Well, huge congratulations then to our first double winners of the season in GT3, and well, maybe this is Phil Keane and Adam Ballon's year after all, as was being predicted back at the start, or the delayed start at least, of the season in August. In GT4 then, the victory goes to HHC Motorsport. It is the 58 cars' second victory of the year. It's the team's third GT4 win in 2020, and this a really important one for Jordan Collard and Patrick Mathiasen. 2.5 points off the championship lead now, Kelvin. I bet they're happy with that.
Boys, just 2.5 points off the championship lead now. How happy are you with that?
Well, I'll go first. I am over the absolute moon with that, to be honest. Yeah, no, full credit to the boys back at HHC. They just gave us a car that was on rails today. Yeah, it made me look like a bit of a hero, but it was all down to them. I tell you what, it was a good day at the office today.
Brilliant. Well done, guys. Well driven. Excellent. Thank you.
So very happy HHC Motorsport partnership there in the mix as far as the title is concerned. So yes, it's tempting to think only GT3 for Silverstone, but there's going to be GT4 just as much. So Silverstone, November 7th and 8th weekend for the championship showdown, and it is going to be a fantastic championship finale. But it's been, Andy, a great penultimate weekend in the Intelligent Money British GT Championship from Snetterton.
Hasn't it just? We'll see you all again next time for the Silverstone Showdown, where championships will be decided. You don't want to miss it.